Hello everyone, welcome to Prosper India. This is your host and news analyst Nishtha. Every year, India spends more than $80 billion importing just two metals, gold and silver. That is larger than the GDP of entire countries like Nepal or Sri Lanka. And yet, India barely produces any gold of its own, which means almost every necklace, wedding ornament, coin, or investment bar in India has been imported from another country. But this is not just another story about jewelry, because behind India's obsession with gold lies trade deficits, dollar outflows, rupee weakening, smuggling networks, foreign exchange crisis, and government crackdowns spanning decades. From Indira Gandhi to Manmohan Singh to Narendra Modi, every Indian government has tried to control gold imports. But none could stop India's demand for gold. So the real question is, why does India import so much gold and silver? And why are governments so worried about it? India imports around 700 to 800 tons of gold every year. In financial year 25-26, India gold imports bill hit an all-time high of $71.98 billion. That was a 24% increase in just 1 year. But here's the important part. The quantity of gold imported actually fell slightly from 757 tons to 721 tons. Now what does that mean? India is not importing massively more gold. It is simply paying much higher prices for almost the same demand because global gold prices have surged. Silver imports are exploded. India imported nearly $12 billion worth of silver in financial year 26. Combined together, India's precious metal import system crossed 84 billion annually. Now here's the biggest structure issue. India produces only around 1 to 2 tons of gold domestically every year. That means more than 99% of India's gold demand depends entirely on imports. India's gold economy is not mining based, it is import based. Every wedding season, every festival, every jewelry purchase depends on foreign gold entering India. Now you must be wondering that where does gold come from? Most of India's gold comes from Switzerland, UAE, South Africa. But here's the interesting fact. Switzerland alone accounts for roughly 40% of India's gold imports. But do you know that gold prices inside India are much higher than the international prices? Now why is that so? Because imported gold faces custom duties, import tariffs, GST, logistic cost, and this is where government policies become important. Why government fear gold imports? Gold imports are paid in dollars. So when India imports massive quantities of gold, billions of dollars leave the country. This affects foreign exchange reserves, rupee stability, current account deficit, trade deficit. India's merchandise trade deficit recently crossed $333 billion, and gold remains one of the largest contributors after crude oil. At a macroeconomics level, gold behaves like a giant dollar outflow machine. And this is exactly why government repeatedly try to control it. India's war against gold imports actually began decades ago. In 1962, after the India-China war, India faced a severe foreign exchange crisis. The country desperately needed foreign exchange for defense spending, food imports, industrial development. At that time, policymakers believed gold imports were wasting precious foreign currency. This led to one of the most controversial economic policies in Indian history, the Gold Control Act. Under Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, private ownership of gold bars and coins were heavily restricted. Jewelers faced strict licensing. Gold trading was highly controlled. The objective was simple: reduce gold imports and save foreign exchange reserves. But the policy completely backfired. Instead of reducing demand, it created one of India's largest underground smuggling economies. Gold smuggling exported through Dubai, Gulf routes, and India's western coastline. By the 1970s and 80s, smuggling syndicates had become extremely powerful. This was the era when illegal gold networks flourished in Mumbai. The government tried to suppress demand, but culturally, Indians never stopped buying gold. Then came 1991. India was facing one of the worst economic crises in its history. Foreign exchange reserves had fallen so low that India only had enough dollars left for few weeks of imports. And in a historic movement, India had to physically pledge gold reserves to foreign banks to secure emergency loans. Around 67 tons of gold were shipped abroad as collateral. The crisis permanently changed India's economic policy. After liberalization in the 1990s, gold imports became easier, restrictions were relaxed, and the gold market expanded rapidly. But this also meant imports surged again. Fast forward to 2013. India was again facing serious economic pressure. The rupee was collapsing, oil prices were high, and gold imports had exploded. At one point, India's current account deficit reached nearly 4.8% of GDP. Gold had become one of the biggest reasons for dollar outflow. Under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, gold import duties were sharply increased, restrictions tightened, and the famous 80-20 rule was introduced. Under the system, 20% of imported gold had to be exported before importers could import more. The government objective was simple: reduce imports and protect the rupee. But once again, higher restrictions increased smuggling incentives. History repeated itself. Now, in the Modi era, the concern remains exactly the same. India still imports almost all of its gold, but now the problem has become even bigger because gold prices globally have surged to high records. In financial year 26, India's gold imports touched nearly $72 billion. Silver imports crossed $12 billion. Combined, India spent around $84 billion on precious metal imports. At the same time, crude oil prices were rising, the rupee was weakening, and India's trade deficit was widening rapidly. That is when Modi government stepped in aggressively. In May 2026, the government sharply increased import duties on gold and silver, and that is from 6% to 15%. The objective was reduce imports, protect foreign exchange reserves, support the rupee, and control the trade deficit. The government also tightened duty-free gold imports, capped imports for jewelry exports, increased compliance monitoring, and introduced stricter reporting requirements. And then came the most unusual moment. Prime Minister Narendra Modi publicly appealed to the Indians to avoid buying gold for 1 year. This was extremely rare because when a Prime Minister publicly asks citizens to reduce gold purchases, it usually signals serious concern about foreign exchange pressure. The immediate impact was visible across the market. After the duty hike, jewelry stocks fell, import demand slowed temporarily, and concerns about smuggling resurfaced. Economists warned that higher duties could once again revive illegal gold trade routes. But many analysts believe that demand may not fall significantly because historically India's gold demand remains strong even during high inflation, price shocks, and heavy taxations. In fact, gold prices rose nearly 60% recently, yet demand fell only marginally. This shows something important. For millions of Indian families, gold is not just an investment, it is savings, emergency security, family wealth, social status, and financial trust. Especially in rural India, physical gold often functions like an alternative banking system. And this creates a fascinating paradox. The government sees gold as trade deficit problem, but household sees gold as financial protection. And this conflict has existed in India for decades. India government tries to reduce gold imports, but demand never truly disappears. Very few major economies depend this heavily on imported precious metals. And as India becomes richer, demand for jewelry, electronics, solar panels, and industrial metals could rise even further. So, the real question is not whether India will continue importing gold and silver. The real question is, can India ever reduce its dependence on them? Because in India, gold is not just a metal, it is culture, it is saving, it is emotion, and it's economics. And for decades, it had shaped India's trade system, politics, and economics. Thank you for watching the video and stay connected for more such videos.